This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. Information at vachamber.com. Virginia hospitals and health systems provide jobs. They support our economy and promote public health. Local hospitals are always open to help people with unexpected health needs. Having a stable healthcare network is vital. Virginia hospitals are our lifeline.
I just received a letter from a student who thanked me for instilling the love of math in him. That's why I teach.
Brought to you by the Virginia Education Association, because a good education is good for everybody.
Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and a very special opportunity to welcome one of the new cabinet secretaries, of which by September 1 there will be 4 new cabinet secretaries. But Secretary Dietra Trent, Dr. Trent, and we very much appreciate your being on. For those of us who know you around Capitol Square, and for folks who know you from around the Commonwealth, you've served going on 7 years as the deputy secretary, both under Kane and then
that's correct,
and now under Governor McAuliffe. So in between, you've also served in the Warner administration.
I served in the Warner administration, both as governor and as senator. So yes.
Yes.
So I having served and now Senator Warner's governor's office, and then into Governor Kane's office, and then back to Senator Warner, and then back to Ann Holton. I feel like the two families have kind of ping-ponged me.
Oh, right. Yes, they have
traded me off. Yeah.
Known a good education expert person.
Well, I hope so.
Hampton University grad, undergraduate, and then both master's and PhD from Virginia Commonwealth University.
That is correct.
So really, and I'd be interested for our viewers to know about your background from a family of educators.
Yes. So I do come from a family of educators. My grandmother was my first grade teacher.
Wow.
And she was more of a mentor to me than anything else. And she took me everywhere. She taught me everything. So education was really high in our home. She was a person who did a lot of community service. Even though she taught in public schools for 40 years, she also would go around the community and she started like Girl Scouts for girls who couldn't afford uniforms. And because I was in the Girl Scouts, and my grandmother would get these ideas, I think, from the activities that she would put me in. And so she started a Girl Scouts club for girls who were too poor to buy uniforms, and then she raised money for them. She did stuff like majorettes. She even started a softball team that still plays now. Like 30 years later, they still have these leagues in Halifax County. So she's a person who always wanted to engage young people at a very, very early age. She always thought that nobody was too hard to learn. Everybody was capable of learning, and you just really needed to take time with individuals and students and just give them a chance. And she believed in giving everybody a chance. And so that's something that was something that was embedded in me at a very, very, very early age. So all of her family were in education. They were either in higher ed or K-12. She had a brother who was the assistant superintendent at Hampton for a long time. So yeah, education was really, really important for us.
Oh, that is quite a heritage.
Yeah.
It is. And you mentioned Halifax County, so
Exactly.
you're a native of Southside Virginia.
I am. I am a proud native of
Yes.
Southside.
Yes. So take us then to Hampton University. How was Hampton University? Was that your grandmother's too?
Well, actually, my grandmother's alma mater was St. Paul's.
Oh.
So HBCUs have always been a part of us, primarily because my mother nor my father actually went to college, but my grandmother, all of her siblings went to college, and we were closer to, and I actually lived with them, or we actually lived with them. So HBCUs was something that I knew of.
Right.
I didn't know that I didn't know I was going to go to Hampton until I went on that campus, and I looked at that campus, and it was the most gorgeous campus I'd seen, and I just thought I wanted to be there. And so I did apply, and I was able to get in, and it really did change my life in terms of the trajectory of my life and what I felt like I could become once I graduated from that university.
What about your background also in education? Your time in education, any service in education in addition to what you've done with governors and senators?
Most of my service in education has been professional. I've served as mentors. I'm now on the Higher Achievement Board. I used to be a mentor. Now that I've taken on more responsibility, I can no longer mentor my fifth grade girls.
It's probably hard to give them up.
It is hard to give them up. It is. But I still serve on the board, and I still try to help out as much as I possibly can. And I've done some other public service stuff around education, but for the most part, higher achievement has kind of been where my heart has been for the last few years. So.
Well, thinking again about your grandmother, and then coming back to you right now, what's some of your educational philosophy? What's your view about learning? Because there's so many challenges from nursery and pre-K and kindergarten on up through higher ed.
Well, I think when I think about it, and I think about where I came from, and the values that were instilled in me as a child, I agree. I think that we owe it to every child to give them every opportunity to be the best that they have been created to become. And it is our responsibility, and it is our duty. And so my philosophy is that I don't think that there's a child that has been born who is incapable of learning and competing if we provide them with the resources that they need to successfully succeed. So that's kind of something that's been instilled in me, not just from what has been said to me, but also just from the examples that I had growing up along the way, and not only in elementary, not only as a child or when I was in Halifax, but also at Hampton. Hampton has a strong commitment to really building a person, building character in a person, building that leadership and that integrity. And it's ingrained in every classroom you take. It is ingrained in every syllabus that the professors teach. And so it's just, something that was reinforced once I got in college.
When I think about some of my own early education in Eastern Kentucky and then some in Virginia, I've wished at times I had the names of some of those teachers and knew their family members now, because those teachers are so important in the early grades.
Yes.
Also on throughout education,
Exactly.
but particularly in getting that good start
Yeah.
in the early years.
Yeah, so I was really blessed to start out in grade 1 with my grandmother, but what that did was gave me an appreciation for gave me appreciation for what she did, and it also made me respect and really honor my teachers going forward. And so I always had deep admiration for the teaching field, and still do. I still do. I still think that we have to do a better job appreciating our teachers, because they have a lot of challenges that they face each and every day. And I think it's important for us, especially those of us who are in public service, to provide them with the support that they need and the encouragement that they need. Sometimes it's not necessarily just money, it's just appreciation, and I think that's important. And that's something that Governor McAuliffe has done a lot of, and has tried to put resources towards making sure that they know how much they are appreciated throughout the Commonwealth is something that's very important to us also.
Well, you step into the shoes of former Secretary Holton right at a time when there's a high school redesign that's being started, and maybe that's a good point to move to some and tell our viewers about where we are in the, you might say, in the initial stages of that redesign.
So when the governor came into office in 2014, one of the first things that he did in the General Assembly, he worked closely with the General Assembly, and they passed, they created the SOL Innovation Committee. And that committee was just designed to take a good look at our standards of learning and make recommendations on how we can better test our children, how we can make sure that we can put more creativity back into the classroom, that we can put more joy into learning, and just look at ways that we can make some changes so that we can do a better job understanding how students are growing and how they are learning and what they are learning. So we created the SOL Innovation Committee, and it's created it's comprised of legislators, it's comprised of a lot of educational stakeholders. It now has it has higher ed stakeholders on it. It has the business community on it. It has some workforce folks on it. So it's what we try to do in creating that model is to make sure that we had everybody at the table who had a stake in these kids and making sure that we get the new standards right. So in 2014, the SOL Innovation Committee was created. In 2015, there were, and so they passed like 3 or 4 significant pieces of legislation as it relates to standards of learning. The first year, they reduced the standards by 5 tests, which is something that the governor heard on the campaign trail, and I think we all hear all the time that students are over-tested. So we did, in the General, work very closely with the General Assembly. We have a really good relationship with members of the General Assembly. They have been huge partners in education, so we find ourselves very fortunate to have that kind of relationship. But so they reduced the number of tests by 5 the first year. They came back and they did expedited retakes. So that is, if a student failed a test, they can immediately go back and retake it. And the research shows that they are able to do much better once they have an opportunity to go back and take it over. They also changed the way that we assess students. So now they're looking at, the Board of Ed has growth models where we're looking at not only where students start and not only where a student ends, but how much they grow in that time period, because we believe that's a better measurement of what that child has learned. So that was another significant piece. And then the final thing that we did last year, and it's not final, because the SOL Innovation Committee we just appointed new members to it, so it's ongoing. But the final thing we did was the high school redesign, and a part of that was to look at what do we want? What are the core competencies that we want our high school, Virginia high school graduates to have? What does a profile of a Virginia high school look like? What are those core competencies? And so the board has been meeting, and they have been working on this. They have endorsed like a concept of the competencies and the knowledge that they want students to have. They're looking at some of the changes that they're looking at is not only do we want our students to have the content knowledge. So it's important that people know that we're not reducing we're not making tests easier.
Right.
You know, it's going to be just as rigorous as it always has been. But they're also, so not only is the content knowledge going to be equally rigorous or even more rigorous, but we're also looking at career exploration. Does the student have a chance in getting the students a chance to really look at what they want to do and begin to explore careers early on? So early on meaning in the 11th and 12th grade, if you're a student and you think you want to go into biology or you want to go into medicine, you know, you have an opportunity to do a deeper dive into those science fields. And so maybe you may not necessarily need as much history. So maybe we want to. So the Board of Education, it's complex, and I don't want to get in trouble trying to explain it. Yes. But they're looking at different models that they can use now that will make sure that students come out and are not career ready, but life ready. So when we look at life ready, that means that child not only has that content knowledge, but that child also has. He's been able to explore those careers. He has workforce skills. So we're looking at externships and internships and apprenticeships, which would actually count towards their graduation credits. We're also looking at civic and community and citizenship. Is this, you know, are we building good citizens? Are we building good community partners? And so we're looking at the holistic environment to make a child or student life ready when they come out of college. One area that they have been looking at is math. So now when we look at our students, and now most students complete their math requirements by the time they're a sophomore or junior. We're looking at increasing that to make sure that students are able to take math throughout high school. So one of the things that we look at is if you're a student and you have completed your high school requirements in the 10th grade, then you actually go 2 years without doing any math. And so a lot of that math is, you know, you have to practice math, you have to work at math. So you lose a lot of that within those 2 years. So the board is now looking at, you know, is the opportunity to increase math requirements. They have a lot of other things that they're looking at. They're now in the process of doing public hearings. They've already done, they have done 2, and by the time this program airs, they will have completed 2 additional ones. One is in Abingdon, and the other one will be in Lynchburg. And it's really just to engage the public on what they're doing and what does a profile of a graduate look like and what would their expectation be. So it gives them, the citizens around Virginia, an opportunity to have a say in that.
So these public hearings that are occurring or have occurred already probably are just the first round of those, I would imagine, as they move forward then and get more precision. And by the way, that was a great explanation for it too. That was excellent. That as they get more closer to some firm decisions, I would imagine they'll have more opportunity for the public.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. Not only will they have more opportunity for that, but the general public can actually go online now to the Board of Education's, the Department of Education's website, and they can also have input that way. So yes, they will complete these rounds within the next, I guess, couple of weeks, and then they go back and they will package it and go from there. So
yes. Well, we're putting up on the screen for the viewers your website, and sure, from there they can get another click and they can get onto the Department of Ed, and they can get that. Would be extremely helpful. You know, one of the parts that you spelled out that I've heard so many positive comments on, not that there's not positive on all of it, is the idea of someone being able to do some sort of an internship along the way. Those of us around Capitol Square, and you've been in offices where you see it too, where we have university interns, so often that's their last year of college. I've told the colleges that I've worked with, send us some sophomores or freshmen, and so that if they know they're really interested, then they could come back and work with the governor, work with another legislator, get more experience. So it'd be great in all areas, if they know what they think they have interest in, to test it out while they're in high school.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're looking at. We're also looking at capstone projects, which I think is very exciting. And So that would be a part of their graduation requirements. And
Excellent.
one of the things that Dr. Staples talked about, one of the divisions in Northern Virginia, and I think it's Fairfax, where they have done this. And one of the students was working, his family had to put his grandmother in some kind of assisted living program, and they had a very difficult time finding a place for her to go. And his capstone project was around, how many assisted living beds or homes are in that area. And then he did some kind of projection about how many will be needed in the next 10 years, and he presented that to the Board of Supervisors. So we're looking at stuff like that that's going to make work relevant and make their education relevant to workforce and to careers.
Well, your primary background has been in higher ed.
It's been in higher ed.
And we've had a great deal of discussion from you and comments from you on secondary and all. In public ed, let's hear some about what's happening in higher ed.
So higher education, it's a lot going on in higher education. I will tell you that the governor's position is that we have to provide access to all of Virginia's students. And so we have a significant amount of underrepresented populations in Virginia who may not have access to college and post-secondary opportunities. And so one of the things that we have done, and I did this before she left, is we met with all of the college presidents and we talked about goals that they can have in terms of letting more of Virginia's underrepresented populations into their universities. And so it's individual goals and it's goals. Some universities, we said, you do a great job with underrepresented populations, but we need you to help them get through college and complete college in 4 years. And then others, we said, you have great graduation rates, but we really need you to help more underrepresented populations be a part of. Right. And we've had these conversations with all of our universities, and they've gone very well, and all of them came back with really great goals. I think the idea behind it and what we've been saying is we really need you to kind of look beyond just your campus and understand that all of Virginia is our responsibility, and that we have to look beyond of just educating the people that are eligible and that are on your campus, but we got to take responsibility for the entire Commonwealth, and sometimes that's going to require you to look beyond just your universe. So they've done a great job of coming back with goals as it relates to access and completion. The other thing that we're looking at is building stronger pipelines and stronger pathways from K-12 to 2 year and then 4 years. The governor just came out with a grant that where 2 or 4 year colleges can actually apply for, and they would have to partner with a K-12, mostly high schools, to actually provide some kind of pipeline between the last few years of high school experience to higher ed. And so the idea is that some of these students will come out of high school with an associate's degree or some other kind of certification or license, and then they will go on to either a 2 or 4 year degree. One of the programs that's a good example of this, and I'm sorry, that's a really good example of this is the Early College Academy at John Tyler. And they are working with Petersburg Public Schools and participating in high demand areas or high need areas is pretty significant for this program also. But they are looking at Petersburg. They're working with Petersburg Public School, Petersburg High Schools, and Hopewell High Schools. They're bringing on students from 9th and 10th grade. During the 9th and 10th grade, they have 100 students at slots. They're looking at bringing these students on, having intensive counseling around what they're doing in 9th and 10th grade. And then in 11th and 12th grade, these students are taken over to the university, to the college. They are immersed,
We're out of time. Would you believe it? We're going to have you back on and talk about
jeez.
workforce
Okay.
and talk about this. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we will have you back. Yes.
Thanks. Sorry, I didn't know that. Thank you, though. I appreciate the opportunity.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community. For jobs, the economy, and public health, Virginia Hospitals, our lifeline.
The Virginia Education Association, because a good education is good for everybody.
Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.